Rocket League is a hard game, and at the core of that difficulty is an insurmountable list of mechanics. When trying to get better, learning the mechanics is hard, but figuring out what you should be practicing is difficult in itself. So today, we're going to talk about the top 3 mechanics you should be practicing in each rank. Unfortunately, 3 mechanics is probably not going to be all you need in order to advance, but hopefully, this list can be helpful if you're trying to explore new ways to practice, or if you're having trouble prioritizing one mechanic over the other when planning out your practice routine. Certain mechanics, I'm not going to have the time to go into great detail as to how to perform them, but I'll definitely include tutorials that I recommend in the description below. Also, I'll highlight any important tips I have regarding that mechanic, but I really want to focus this video on identifying which mechanics are important and how I personally like to practice them. Timestamps are in the description so that you can skip to whichever rank is most suitable for you, but I implore you to please take a quick look at all the topics on the list, in case I cover a mechanic that you're uncomfortable with, but in a lower rank. Before we begin, I hope you enjoyed the video, and be sure to destroy that like button. Just kill that thing, because it helps so much with the YouTube algorithm, and it lets me know that you'd like to see more content like this. So, getting all the liking and subscribing out of the way, let's get started with our first rank. For many of us, this was our starting line. Whether you're here because you're simply new to the game or because you haven't put time into the right areas, I'm happy you're here, because from here on out, watching videos and gathering information is going to speed up the learning process immensely. For the bronze level of play, I'd like to break the game down into 3 main aspects that you should probably be working on: basic aerials, shooting, and defense. Assuming you've already done all the basic tutorial and training at least up to a rookie and pro level, welcome to our first training pack. This is Novice Aerials by Whey Protein. All the links and codes will be in the description below. But for this pack, I want you to just focus on getting a touch on the ball. It doesn't really matter if you land the shot or not, but really just focus on flying at your own pace and being comfortable consistently touching the ball. It really doesn't matter if you can get it in or not. It's great if you can, but it's not a requirement, because right now what we're going to try to do is focus on getting consistent touches on the ball so that if you go up for a ball, you have a really good chance of actually landing and hitting it. So I recommend, at least before you play, make sure you get a touch on each ball. So if you miss, for example, then I want you to restart. Even if you get a touch and it doesn't go in, that's perfectly fine. You can move on to the next shot. Just make sure you get these consistent touches at least once per shot. For all the packs in bronze, they're all going to be by Whey Protein, and this is the basic striking training pack that I'm going to recommend. I really want you to focus on just getting the ball on target. Don't really worry about the timer. The timer is kind of short in this, so if you have to wait for like an extra bounce, make sure it's on net and it kind of disappears before it hops in, then that's not a really big problem, and don't beat yourself up about it. Just do it at your own pace, and remember, consistency is key. So drive at it slowly, as slow as you need, and just make sure it's on target. If it disappears, don't sweat it and just keep moving on to the next shot. If you need, wait for a couple more bounces and then make an attempt on the ball. Like there, you kind of have to hurry it a little bit more, but so if you can't do ones like that without waiting for an extra bounce, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you're set up for it. Same as before, I'm going to recommend you go through this entire pack before you play. Just try to make sure everything's on target. It doesn't matter if you clear it first try, or even if it doesn't even clear within, or doesn't make the shot within the time limit. You just want to make sure that you're consistently putting it on target, because that's going to be the most important thing in game. Last but not least is the Novice Clears training pack. It's going to be very important that as balls are being centered towards your net, you're able to consistently clear them before shots are taken. So you want to try to clear it around this area. Make sure you clear it before the shot makes it past this area. If you wait until it gets to about here, then your clear is not that useful, because they could probably score it by then, especially if they're playing really aggressively. But also keep in mind positioning. You don't want to try and go for it too early either, because especially with shot 3 is a great example of this. This is really good positioning for clearing it as it head towards your first goalpost. And that's important, because by the time it hits your goalpost is when the angles of the ball is more limited and it's easier to get a read on how you should be clearing this ball. But if you try to rush it, then you might end up misreading the bounce and the ball just goes right past you, right? So try to focus on the positioning and the timing of these clears so that you can mimic them in game. Another great example is this one. You can wait for it to bounce, get a little closer before going for it, instead of rushing it and potentially missing it completely. So when going through this pack, just try your best to pay attention to the positioning of when you actually want to clear, and mimic these situations in game. Don't rush it, and apply your training when you're actually in a match. Also, with some of these clears, I want you to be mindful and not do something like this, for example, where you see how this essentially just sets the ball back to the middle. Instead, try to put it into your corners or towards the enemy net. So with this one, you can either take a wider angle, take your time, and put it towards your enemy net, or if worse comes to worse, in a real game, you might want to just bring it to your own corner, which is a lot safer still than banging it into the wall and potentially recentering the ball for the enemy team. For silvers who are pushing into gold, we're going to try to take that consistency that we started to build in bronze and add some power to it. So the first practice routine I would recommend is wall ball. But, you know, in Rocket League. The game is pretty simple. Every time you hit the ball hard, quickly double back and get ready to hit the ball at the wall again as hard as you can, so that it'll make it back to our end, and we just repeat this process, see how many repetitions you can get without dropping the volley. A couple tips to get you started. The most important thing is that you want to try to hit the ball as it bounces. Right when it bounces and it's on the way up, you want to flip into the ball and you should be able to boom it. The reason we want to hit the ball when it's on the way up is so that the ball's velocity doesn't work against us. If the ball is on the way down in any of the pink areas, for example, any force that we impart on the ball going upwards is going to clash with the current velocity of the ball. Whereas if we hit the ball when it's on the way up in one of the yellow areas, the velocity of the ball in the y direction is going to be positive. So the force that we're adding to the ball and the current velocity of the ball is going to work together in trying to give us more height on the ball as we hit it upwards. Unlike in the other case where hitting the ball this way as it's coming down, the velocity is going to work against us. The next thing you should probably try to keep in mind when trying to hit the ball hard is that you want to flip through the ball and not into the ball. Just like in tennis, when you swing at a tennis ball, or even when you're kicking a real soccer ball, you don't just kick the soccer ball and end your foot right where the ball is. You want to kick through the ball. Then how do we do that in Rocket League? And we do that by flipping as late as possible, right as we're about to make contact with the ball, or else something like this might happen. And the last thing you need to know in order to consistently hit the ball hard is that on grounded rolling balls like this, you simply want to boost into the ball as hard as you can, and that will punt the ball upwards. The reason you want to avoid flipping into the ball is because you have to jump in order to flip. So let's say you're the pink line here and then the yellow is your flip itself. What's going to happen is, especially when you front flip, your car tilts forward. So the force that you're applying to that ball is going to be down and forward, causing the ball to stay grounded. So that's why on grounded balls, you really don't want to flip, and instead just hit the ball at the bottom and that'll punt it upwards. With those tips in mind, start your volley by just boosting and driving into the ball. Try to see how long you can keep your volley up until the ball gets in a weird spot or a bad touch causes it to lose too much power. Understanding how to consistently hit the ball with power is going to help immensely when we get to our next topic. The first training pack we're going to look at in silver is called Power Clears, and this is going to make use of what you learned in the first section. You can wait for the bounce and get the best clear you can towards the enemy side. Unfortunately, with some of these shots, you're not going to be able to wait for a bounce, but you can still apply the second tip, which is flipping through the ball, in order to get the most power possible. So you can fly and then flip, and that'll push the ball back into the corner safely. You'll also be able to practice getting power on rolling balls like so, in a more dynamic and useful situation than playing wall ball. Here's another example of waiting for a ball to bounce and then booming it towards the enemy side. Especially in the lower ranks where a lot of double commits and over aggression happens, something like this might easily build and net you a couple goals. Here's another example of one that you can't wait for a bounce, but you can fly towards it and flip through the ball to get as much power as possible. Doing a couple more shots here, you can see how waiting for the bounce can really help you get just a lot of power on these clears. The last practice routine I would recommend doing every day in silver, trying to hit gold, is practicing your fast aerials. If you're not familiar with what fast aerials are, then I'll link a tutorial in the description. But essentially, you're just holding back before you jump, and then pressing jump again to get a lot of height as quick as possible. And don't worry about scoring it, just like in bronze, but you really want to be able to just consistently get a touch on the ball, even if you're jumping at a weird angle. So if, like, for example, with this one, you're not exactly lined up. You could line up before you jump, or just fly up while not lined up and fix yourself in the air. Practice feathering your boost and consistently getting these touches on the ball. Once you're comfortable performing fast aerials on a still ball, then move on to this Way Aerials training pack. It's a great way to warm up and start building your consistency when you need to make a high touch in the game. The important thing to remember is that in the lower ranks, really try to focus on using aerials defensively and not aggressively, since using it aggressively at the wrong time can leave you out of boost and out of position. But being comfortable with fast aerials like this will strengthen your defense when you really need to fly up to prevent a shot. As we step into mid gold, getting into plat, we're going to focus on getting better at our car control, improving our consistency hitting touches on the wall, and we're going to get started on practicing dribbling. Diving right into car control, if you're not already familiar with how the flips work in this game, then that's a great place to start. Essentially, the flips are all dictated by the car's nose. So for example, if you front flip, this is what a normal front flip looks like, but if the nose is pointed at the camera, when you front flip, you're actually going to go towards the camera because the front is dictated by the nose. And same goes for left and right flips. So for example, if the nose is pointed at the camera, and you were to left flip right now, even though we're inputting left on our screen, the car is going to go to the right. But that's because it's going to go to the left of the nose. So here, if you hit right flip, relative to the nose, right is actually going to make this car go left. And why this is important especially is if a car is tilted like this, for example, since the nose is still pointing forward and you left flip, you're going to go to the left. And that will help us immensely with the next topic, which is wall touches, so that when you want to get a touch on the wall and the ball is a little bit off from it, side flipping here, for example, to the right is not actually going to make the car go down, even though that's the right side of the car. It's going to make, according to the nose, since it's pointed forward, it's going to make the car go away from the wall, as you can see. But here, right flipping brings the car away from the wall, and that's going to be important to remember as we get into the next topic. But let's talk a bit more about car control and how we could practice it before we move on. If you're on Steam, there's a lot of workshop maps that are just absolutely fantastic for practicing car control, but I'm not going to go too deep into which workshop maps I prefer because I want to make this tutorial friendly for players that are looking at this from console. Once you're comfortable with basic flying, then the next drill I'm going to recommend is flying over these 100 boosts. I like using Forbidden Temple for this because it's kind of like a lane that you can just follow. And you just want to do a couple laps and try to be as low as possible, almost like you're grabbing the 100 boost. And to make things a little more challenging, you can also do laps around the 100 boosts, but don't use air roll. And you get really used to controlling the car with the different orientations, whether the car is backwards or on its side in the air. And this will help you out a lot, but this might be extremely difficult if you haven't done too much car control training. It's still not the easiest thing for me. So so if you fall, don't be disheartened. Just keep going and try to complete a whole lap without using air roll. Doesn't matter how many times you fall, just get back up and keep going, and eventually you're gonna be able to do multiple laps without using air roll and without having to get back up even once. Another popular drill that I've seen is flying in circles around the ball, staying close to where this kind of line is, and just keep flying in circles around it, controlling your boost. Try to keep the same height. Don't be going up and down too much like that. Try to keep a consistent height as you fly, so that you can understand vertical speed a bit better as well. That'll be extremely helpful. And same with the flying over the 100 boosts. You're gonna want to try this without using air roll as well. Just circling the ball and then do a couple laps with air roll and a couple laps without. And finally, if you want to get even more creative with it, the Pillars map in free play is extremely good. With the pillars here, you can do figure eights, you can use air roll, choose not to use air roll, and honestly, one of the most important things about these practices is trying to get into this, what people like to call blackout movements, where you're just not sure how your inputs affect your car. Getting into as many blackout movements as possible is going to be extremely helpful in helping you master aerial car control. It's going to feel awful because you're just going to not understand what's going on, your input's going to go nuts, and then you're just going to fall. But I promise you, you put enough time into it, and eventually, basically no matter how your car is oriented, you're going to know how your inputs affect it, and you're going to be able to fly with or without air roll and in any orientation. So just put this practice in every day at this point, because you might not see results right away, but we're starting this practice in gold so that you'll be properly prepared by the time you hit diamond and need to get into more advanced mechanics. The next topic on the list is wall touches. So if this ever happens to you, then I might have a couple tips that could improve your consistency. Taking a look at one of my old replays back when I was in gold, you can see that my touch here is unsuccessful, and we can learn a lot from this. Because getting a consistent touch basically boils down to giving the ball a chance to get in front of your car so that you can easily hit it with your nose. As soon as we get onto the wall, because I'm moving so fast, I'm right next to the ball. And with the ball losing speed as it's traveling up the wall due to gravity, I'm going to end up either getting under the ball or even ahead of the ball, making it basically impossible for me to get a solid touch anymore. So one really great way to practice this is to go through a wall shots training pack, but without using boost. Look, without using boost, look how clear it is, my view of that ball. As opposed to in the replay, it looks something more like this, where I overshot it and then my touch was really scuffed. Doing this, you can easily get a solid touch on the ball with your nose. Of course, this isn't ideal for an in-game situation if someone is challenging you, but it's great for practice to see what kind of hammer angle you want when you're about to make a touch. And then as you get more comfortable with this, you can start adding more and more boost, but still keeping in mind this is the camera angle you want as you make that touch. So try going through the whole pack with basically no boost unless you really need it, because some of these shots you probably can't even make it to the shot in time unless you use boost. And then try going through the whole pack again, but with adding as much boost as you can before you start missing. And going through the pack like this is going to help you with your consistency immensely when making these touches on the wall. One point to bring up real quick is, as mentioned in the car control tutorial, when you're on the wall and you side flip, you get away from the wall, right? So if we just take a look at this ball again, so the ball bounces off the wall like this, then as you go up, you can see it leaving the wall, you can jump off and side flip to get a pass towards middle. So when practicing these kinds of shots, there's multiple ways to actually get a touch, whether you want to get a pass or whether you want to get the shot yourself by just jumping off the wall and then front flipping into the ball. So once you can consistently get a touch on all the shots with or without boost, try going through this training pack again with either shooting all the shots or passing them all. This will open up a lot of your options in game. And finally, we've made it to dribbling. Especially if you're a twos player, this is a great time to start working on your ground game. If you're new to dribbling, I'll link tutorials in the description below to get you started, but I won't really be going into how to dribble. Instead, I want to focus on showing you guys drills that might help your consistency and understanding of dribbling. Getting into our first drill, go ahead and get the ball on top of your car however you'd like, whether it's in free play or if there's a training pack you like to use. And basically, you just want to dribble the car as long as you can without using boost. And once you're comfortable with basically being able to dribble forever or for at least for a minute or so, then you're going to want to start dribbling with only using boost. Don't use your gas here. And being able to do both is going to teach you a lot about controlling the speed of the ball. If you find that a bit difficult, then another drill you could try is just dribbling the ball along the lip right here. Just push it along and match the speed of the ball like this. This will teach you a bit about how you should be throttling your gas and throttling your boost in order to keep the same speed as the ball. And then once you're ready, you can pop the ball in your car and move on to the first two drills I mentioned. One aspect that gets hugely overlooked when practicing dribbling is the setup. Even if you can dribble and flick, it's useless if you don't know how to use it in game. One of the most common situations is when you're on defense and the attackers are rotating back. So instead of clearing the ball and giving up possession like this, you can try to set up a dribble situation that way. But one of the most common things is you just gotta clear and maybe they're out of boost and the ball's like rolling here. How do you get a dribble to happen when you're on the wall? There's a couple ways to do this. and you should probably try to practice them all in free play. One is lightly touch the bottom of the ball, and that's going to cause it to bounce and pop, so you can just sneak under here and start your dribble. The other method is if a ball is rolling like this, you can get under it here and catch it like that. And finally, one other way to start a dribble is by lightly boosting into the ball to bounce it off the wall. And that'll cause it to get in a bouncing state where you can easily get under it and start your dribble that way as well. So be sure to practice all the different ways that you can set up the ball, as well as the dribbling and flicking itself, when you really want to improve your ground game. Once you can comfortably control the speed of the ball, that's going to get your flicks way more consistent, because whenever there's no sparks, like right now, you see that your jump keeps the ball basically glued to your car. But when your speed is not matching and you see these sparks between you and the ball, then you run the risk of doing a flick like this, where it detaches from your car right as you jump. Or you could be going a little too fast and you see these sparks, the moment you jump and flick, the ball's going to be left behind. I know I didn't talk too much about the flicks themselves, so I'll definitely be linking a tutorial for that as well. But essentially, as soon as you're able to get the ball speed matching, as mentioned before, that's 90% of the job, and the rest is just flipping in the direction that the ball is closest to. So for example, the ball is in the front of your hood in the challenge, front flip. If it's, to your side, then just do a side flip. One thing worth mentioning is that when you're doing a side flick, which is usually done when you're turning, the sparks are going to be pretty okay, and you don't have to worry too much about them. The sparks are happening because the ball is pressing up against your car, and not because, well, your speed is not matching technically, but your ball is pressing up against your car. So when you're turning, you're still going to be able to get your flick off just fine, even if there are sparks, and you don't have to worry about the sparks as much as if you're doing, say, like a front flip flick, it's sparking, and then this might happen. So yeah, just be sure to practice all your basic flicks, your front flip, side flip, and especially your diagonal flicks. It's going to be extremely useful early on. And eventually, once you're extremely comfortable with doing all of those, you can start moving on to doing more threatening flicks like the 45s and 90s. At this point, once you're about mid to high platinum trying to push into diamond, there aren't any major topics I'd like to introduce. Instead, I highly recommend simply just getting more comfortable with all the topics mentioned before, from silver till now. Try watching your replays to see where you're lacking most mechanically, and find new training packs that help you target that skill. Practicing in Rocket League is a lot like working out in real life. If you keep doing the same workout every day, you're eventually going to see diminished returns, and that's the same for training packs. You keep doing the same training pack, you get too used to the shots, so unless you're just using it to warm up, you should really go and seek out new training packs that fit your mechanical skill and what you're looking for. So if you're looking for new training packs, I personally really like the ones made by Poquito and Dribbles. Or Whey Protein has a great Excel sheet that sorts all kinds of training packs by level and mechanic. I'll be linking this in the description below as well. And yeah, just keep working on that consistency and fill in the gaps of your play, and you should be mechanically ready for diamond. Stepping into diamond, you should have a fair understanding and consistency with all the basic skills in the game. So now it's time to improve our game speed. But we all have the same car, so how do you actually get faster? The answer to that lies in proper use of your drifting, wave dashing, and having good recovery. Starting with the drill by KevPert, we're going to try to improve our drifting accuracy. And for that, all we need to do is hop into free play. And the goal of this drill is to just drive past the ball, drift, and then hit the ball. But we're going to try to do this as fast as possible, and that means using boost whenever possible. Unfortunately, if you boost all the way through, you're going to overshoot the ball. So in order to perform this maneuver properly, you're going to want to boost to go past the ball, but as soon as you're getting ready to start drifting, let go of your boost and start your drift. And you're not going to want to start boosting again until your car is starting to face the ball. Then you can boost through the rest of your drift, let go, and hit the ball. From a bird's eye view, your path will look something like this. But the areas where you're going to want to apply boost is going to be marked in the red. You'll see that you want to use boost to get up to the ball and past it, but you want to start letting go as you begin your drift. Once the nose of your car starts to turn and gets more lined up with the ball, that's when you can start applying boost again and boost into the ball. Once you're comfortable with the basic drill, this is a drift shots training pack where you need to properly apply drift and boost. Just remember to boost past the ball, stop boosting, and start your drift. Then you can start boosting again once your angle is getting around the apex of the turn. Some of the later shots can be kind of difficult, especially if it requires you to drift catch it, so don't feel too disheartened by those. Just simply try it and move on if it's something you're not comfortable with doing. Next up, we're looking to combine drifting with half flips and wave dashes. So if you're not comfortable with wave dashing or half flips, as with the other topics, I'll be focusing on showing ways to practice the mechanic and utilize it, but I won't be showing you how to do it. So if you're unfamiliar with those, then please check the description below for a recommended tutorial before moving on. One important habit to get into is holding drift whenever you get bumped or land on any surface. You can practice this by simply boosting your nose into the wall and then holding drift when you land. And this is where being comfortable with half flips come in. Once you make a habit of drifting, you're not always going to land in line with your momentum. So to fix this without stopping, you can quickly jump and then dodge in the direction of your momentum and fix your car's orientation by canceling your flip, so you land with your nose pointing in the direction of your momentum. The inputs and mentality behind this are very similar to half flips, and that's why it's important to be comfortable with them. Landing awkwardly happens often, so if you use this technique to recover fast during grounded recoveries, you're going to notice a big change in your game speed. So this is something I would definitely recommend practicing consistently in free play. Another maneuver to practice is wave dashing, especially when you're going from the wall to the ground. This is probably the most common situation to use a wave dash, so definitely put some time into that as well. And eventually you can just combine all of it, the drifting, the flip canceling, and the wave dashes to make your movement smoother. We're going to end the game speed section with talking about how to practice your air recoveries. I have a basic drill that was able to help me. You simply jump before you hit the halfway mark, and then I try to get some height as quick as I can, and I just hold arrow and just start mashing random directions. And right when I'm about to land on the wall, I do my best to start fixing my car and making sure it's facing downwards with all four wheels touching the wall. You can try to make this as hard on yourself as possible by just recovering as late as possible. And do this until you're comfortably always landing with your nose pointing downwards. In general, I highly recommend warming up without involving the ball and focusing on your car control first. So these sort of drills are a great candidate if you need a starter for your warm-up routine. In keeping with trying to speed ourselves up, the next thing we're going to work on is improving our fast aerials. We'll start by going through Verge's fast aerial training pack before moving on to an aerial shots pack. We want to isolate focusing on our speed before putting it together with accuracy. If you're having trouble with this pack, I'll have his fast aerial tutorial linked below. Once you have your speed warmed up, I highly recommend this training pack by Pokito. It has all sorts of aerials, whether it's passes from the corner or just floating boomers in the air. It's a great way to build your aerial speed and accuracy if you dive into this pack after warming up your speed using the Verge fast aerial pack. At this point in the game, you really want to start working defense into your practice routine. We're going to look at two different training packs. The first one is a general saves training pack, and you'll find the fast aerial training we did previously to be very helpful here. One thing to really focus on when doing this is to make sure every shot you save, you push the ball into the corner or a safe spot. Otherwise, redo the shot. Because simply saving the ball is not good enough. We need to think about saving the ball in a way that doesn't eventually result in a goal anyways. The next one is a shadow defense pack. Especially as a twos player, you need to start becoming more comfortable and confident about your shadow defense. And even as a threes player, if you end up being the last man back and both teammates are recovering. The reason shadow defense is so important is because when your teammate is recovering, maybe from trying to pass or they got bumped after trying to rotate out, and you're in a 2v1 situation, trying to 50 this can be very dangerous. Because if the both of you 50, even if you win and the ball keeps pushing forward, in a 2v1, their teammate might have a chance to still push it past you. So when playing defense, you really want to go for 50s when you have a teammate behind you that can watch your back. So how do you achieve this in the situation when your teammate's still recovering? And that's with shadow defense. If you shadow, you can slow the play down immensely, because if they push the ball too fast while you're shadowing, you can simply backflip into the ball. So they have to play at your pace in order to avoid risking pushing the ball into the butt of your car. So as we're going to see here, shadow defense can be a great way to safely push the ball into the corner or any safe location, take possession, and give your teammate a chance to get back to the net. So stepping into the training pack itself. As with the goalie pack, be sure you're pushing all these shots into a corner. Simply touching the ball and having it drop in front of your net is going to result in a goal anyways. So that's not good enough. Make sure you redo every shot until you successfully push it deep into your corner or into a safe location. And don't hit it too hard or it's just going to bounce back towards the middle as well. At least for me, carrying with a solid defense is a much easier way to climb out of diamond than it is to ball chase and try to carry with over aggression. So try to work on these consistently and become an iron wall for your team. Champ is a great milestone and you should be proud if you made it this far. At this point, you're probably already noticing people's defense rotation is getting a little bit better, so in the previous sections, I really wanted to focus on having a solid defense and fishing out a mistake for a free goal, but now it's time to improve our offense. So we're going to start improving our shooting power and accuracy with some striker training. This will lead us nicely into working on bounce dribbles, and finally, we'll finish off this section by looking at advanced ball mechanics such as air dribbles and ceiling shots. Starting with striker training, there are two key points when you want to try to hit the ball harder: the timing and the hitbox. To quickly explain timing, let's look at how we realistically hit a soccer ball. Our foot doesn't end at the ball, right? It keeps moving and goes through the ball whenever we try to kick it. So how does this relate to Rocket League? Well, just like the kick, we want to get through the ball. But the problem is, when a lot of people want power on the ball, they try to flip into it, but they're not maximizing their flip. For example, like this. Much of their flip is wasted getting to the ball. When instead, if you alter your timing and try to flip as late as possible, it'll give you more power as you flip through the ball instead of into it. The other deciding factor on hitting the ball hard is the hitbox. Where in the hitbox do we really want to be hitting the ball? So to answer that question, I'm going to make a dumb analogy here for a second and hopefully it gets the point across. Imagine hitting your head on a table. Where would it hurt the most? And that would be if you hit the corner, right? Because the force is focused to a point. And the same goes for Rocket League. You want to hit using your car's corners in order to maximize the force. Now, getting into the actual practice. This is a training routine by King Ranny, and if you want more details, then his tutorial will be linked down below. But essentially, we want to try to get above 60 miles per hour on the first shot, and then somewhere between 55 to 60 on the second and third shot. As for the rest, as long as it's a banger towards net, towards maybe like the top corner, we're going to be happy with it since the ball gets increasingly further from the net. Okay, so starting off with the first shot. We're going to start by just focusing on touching the ball with our corner. Don't even bother flipping, just jump at the ball and touch it with the corner of your car. And once we can get this consistently, we basically want to flip at the same time we make contact with the ball to maximize our power. And we want to do a front diagonal flip. So if you're hitting it with the top right corner, then do a front right flip. And you should be able to hit the 60 miles an hour. And with the basics in mind, carry that into the rest of the training pack. And you should be able to bang these on net. As for the further ones, you could add air roll to make it a little easier, but then you might overshoot it like this. So I would recommend practicing with and without air rolls to figure out what's most comfortable for you on the long shots. There are a lot of great shooting training packs out there, but whichever one you do, try warming up with the strength and accuracy pack first every day so that you can take those core aspects into every part of your game. Practicing our striker training is going to lead very nicely into switching over to practicing bounce dribbles. There are so many things you can do on a bounce dribble. You can either just slip under the ball to get into a carry dribble. You could bait your opponents into a bad 50-50. But most importantly, with the bounce dribble, you're going to be able to set up deadly power shots from anywhere on the map, especially if you're familiar with the striker training. If you're unfamiliar with bounce dribbling itself, then the best place to start is by practicing the bounce. You're going to want to be able to bounce it consistently, and for that, I really like this drill by Musty where he just sets up a bounce dribble for himself. And then you start bounce dribbling in a circle and try to keep it up as long as possible. Once you're comfortable with the bounce, it's time to get into this training pack, which can help you set up your power shots. Try to bounce the ball either once or twice and then take the shot. This can help greatly open up your offense, since any grounded passes made to you or just random balls coming your way, you're going to be able to set up a power shot from anywhere. This is so many people's favorite topic, and in my opinion, this is around the time to start learning or getting better at both air dribbles and ceiling shots. I have a tutorial on air dribbles, and if you need help learning them, the link will be in the description below, but teaching air dribbles and ceiling shots would be too much for the scope of this video. I just wanted to highlight that this is a great time to start learning them. I have to mention, at this level, they're rarely the most optimal play when trying to rank up, but the ball control and the card control you gain from learning these skills is invaluable. I highly recommend practicing all these in free play and from all sorts of angles. I promise you, if you go at this correctly, you're going to see a huge jump in your mechanical skill. Now we're getting into the tricky ranks. It's kind of hard for me to talk about this since I'm barely in here myself, but still, I'd be happy to share what I felt were the most useful things I practiced leading up to this point. We'll start off by going into redirects and then passing. And I do think passing is probably the most important, but I put it second because you kind of need to know how to hit a redirect in order to understand what a desirable pass looks like. And finally, we have backboard reads and pre-jumping. A great place to start for redirects is with Poquito's redirect pack. I really like to make sure I sink a shot into both the left and right side if possible, before moving on to the next one. This pack is a great introductory pack. But for weirder and more unorthodox angles, I switched over to the whey protein redirect consistency pack. This also might help you a bit better with preparing you for the dynamic in-game situations that you might run into, and it contains more wall and grounded redirects as well. One of the best ways to rank up is to empower your teammates. Help them play the best they can, and it'll make your job so much easier. Especially as your teammates get more mechanically inclined, some of them are going to be able to hit insane passes if you can give it to them. So that makes it all the more important to be able to pass correctly, downfield and infield. These three are the training packs I like to use to practice passing. They're very interestingly set up. Every odd number is a pass from a teammate that you can shoot, while every even number shot is the pass for the shot before it. So for example, if we look at shot 1 again, we can see that the ball lands exactly right before that 100 boost. So when we actually try to do shot 2, we're going to want to mimic that pass as close as possible. Poorly taken shots are huge possession risks at this point. So learning more advanced passes infield and downfield away from the enemy defenders is going to be crucial. I know this might get really inconvenient for the console players because you can't go backwards without Bacchus mod, so be sure to reset the shot and take a really close look as to where the ball is landing. I personally like to use the pennies, like this one for example. You can see that the ball lands right in front of this penny, so when I go to doing the pass, that's kind of my point of reference as to like what the goal of my pass is going to look like. On to the last topic, backboard reads and pre-jumps. This is probably one of the biggest gaps in my mechanics, so I'm always looking for new ways to practice this. But for me, I've mostly seen progress when doing a lot of free play and just hitting it as hard as I can from different angles and trying to pre-jump any major bounces that happen. When it comes to training packs, my preferred pack for this is using the backboard therapy pack. Taking a look at what's the goal in all this. If we want to look at the lifespan of a bounce, first there's going to be some sort of hit that occurs that causes this bounce to actually happen. Now let's label position number 2 as where the bounce actually occurs. With your standard aerial, you might wait for the bounce to occur and see where it's going before you jump up for the ball. But if we want to be able to hit this ball even earlier, then we're going to need to pre-jump it. So we need to be up for this ball before the bounce has even occurred. The goal is so that the moment number 1 has occurred and the hit has happened that's going to cause this bounce, we want to already be jumping for the ball and reading where the ball is going to end up and then intercepting it in the air, so that you can hit it much earlier than if you jumped after the bounce has occurred, then you're going to be somewhere around this trajectory. Being good at this can be extremely helpful when trying to beat defenders to the ball. Getting comfortable with these backboard bounces can also lead very nicely into learning double touches. I personally really like the one by Seaberfy. I find the bounces in this a lot more in tune with what you might see in game. One thing that helped me a lot when learning double touches at first is always aiming for the same spot for different setups. This helped me quickly get comfortable with at least one specific bounce. Then you can take these basic principles into practicing more dynamic bounces from all sorts of setups and angles. And that concludes all the major mechanics I've found most helpful to practice in every rank. I really hope this ends up being helpful to some of y'all. Rocket League is an extremely hard game, and one of the most difficult aspects can be figuring out what to practice and how to practice them. So for anyone watching this, if you're feeling lost in the sea of mechanics, I hope this can serve you as a sort of roadmap to help steer you in the right direction. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and let me know in the comments below what else you'd like to see. I'll catch you guys next time.